Apparently, a broken heart caused by a traumatic event such as grief or a divorce can actually damage the heart as much as having a heart attack. That's because a sudden rush of hormones caused by an emotionally stressful event can actually damage the heart muscle. I mean, I don't know if that surprises any of you, but it validates that notion of truly having a broken heart and the effect that has on you. And with all sorts of grief, all sorts of divorce, it can be different reasons.
It doesn't surprise me in a way, because when you do go through a terrible, terrible experience like losing a child, or even, I think, a divorce, because that can be so incredibly overwhelming, but particularly losing a loved one, you do feel a physical pain. I think anyone watching right now who's been there, you feel a physical pain, and it's here. And with a child, you actually feel your arms ache as well. There is a physical pain. And it doesn't surprise me that many, when they couldn't describe it in any other way, maybe, you know, centuries ago, they talked about it as a broken heart, because that's what it feels it is. And
sorry to interrupt, what do you mean by your arms?
Your arms physically ache.
Because you're not holding...
You feel you need to hold a child. And hold it close to your heart as well. So there is, I can understand the focus being on the heart. And you do as well. When you try and explain it to people years later, you say, look, you never get over it, but it's like learning to live without a limb or something. It's like learning to live with a part of you that is no more. And maybe the idea of your heart being physically broken sort of explains it to you. And I rather like the fact that scientists have found that that is possible, because it sort of does validate the awful experience, the physical pain that you feel.
Not that you should need it validating, because, you know, when you think of loss and going through something so heart-wrenching as to what you went through, I can't imagine anything other than physiological change, hormonal change, emotional change, and that all affects the physical things in your body. So,
you know, when you read about a very old married couple who've been married for eons and eons and eons, and then, you know, at the age of 90 plus, one of them dies, and the other one dies the next day or within hours, and nurses and doctors say, well, there was nothing really medically wrong with them.
But that's because you you lose the will to live. But for you, you had to keep going.
Yes. Because I already had two children.
Yeah.
Oh, and it would have been a very different story if we hadn't. Yes. I think you have to have a reason to go on living the next day. And losing a child particularly, you just feel, what's the point of life? If your child can die, what's the point of going on? If you haven't got other things to go on for, I think it would be very
difficult. And you want to end the pain as well.
Yeah.
It's just an easy option, isn't it?
And you had a campaign that you backed as well, obviously, Anne, off the back.
Well, the campaign the Cot Death campaign kept me going, and all of the cot death experts I interviewed in those first few months, because I was making the documentary that we were hoping that would get change, all of the experts said to me, you should not be here interviewing me. You should be at home coping and dealing with your pain. And I said, no, I want to be doing this. And it was like anger kept me going. And they all said, it will hit you. You can't escape grief. It will hit you. And it did months later, and it hit me like a hammer.
But were you glad to have that almost distraction at the beginning to focus on? Do you think you could have dealt with it straight away, or you needed that respite?
No, and a lot of people also say that sometimes when something terrible happens, we send in the counsellors too soon, and that maybe you should let people deal with things a little bit themselves, so that then later, when they know whether they need help, then they go.
Because you're in shock, aren't you, at the beginning? I mean,